Okay, you're starting to shoot the Survive the Night movie again? Like, it's not complete yet?
No, we're done, but we're going to be released. So we're releasing the movie in a couple weeks. May 22nd is when it comes out.
Okay. So are you planning to release it on an OTT platform or anything?
It's going to come out first domestically in the United States. So it'll come out first here on streaming. So it'll be like a streaming thing. And then they'll probably start releasing it internationally, as the months go on. It's sort of like a pandered out release. So yeah, it'll definitely be out by this year all over the world.
Yeah, because I saw the trailer and I mean, I also got the vibe of like Bruce. Since we see Bruce Willis, we always remember Die Hard. So I also got a Die Hard, but like I saw the trailer, but like I just watched the movie, but sadly it's postponed. I think I'm just waiting whenever it releases on streaming services, I'll be the first one to watch it. So
cool.
So like I'm really glad to have you on board for this session. So basically we'll be discussing about your filmmaking style, your filmography, your early days into cinema, and how you view cinema, your perspective and things. So the first question I wanted to ask you is like, how did you get started into filmmaking and who were your inspirations?
That's a great question. So I got started at USC Film School. So it's a big film school here in California. I'm sure you know a lot of filmmakers went here, like George Lucas and Robert Zemeckis, and a lot of big writers, directors, filmmakers went here. So that's how I got my start. So I went to school there, studied for a few years, made short films, and went through that period where I was trying to figure out, okay, how can I transition into features, and it's a long process. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you learn about the process, and then you realize what your strengths and weaknesses are. And as you shoot more movies, you learn how you as a filmmaker, how your voice is different from other filmmakers, and you really realize the genres that you like the most, and how you want to do like specific genres. Like when I was at USC, I started watching a lot of action thrillers and horror, and I was like, okay, these are the types of movies that I like, so these are the type of movies I'm going to make. And I kind of really started to study that and realize, like, okay, I'm not good at comedy, I'm not good at romance, but this action, thrillers, and suspense, I love this stuff here. So that's the good thing is about just practicing and doing it as much as you can. You realize that this is like your strength, and these are the things you really enjoy doing. So
what impact did the film school have on you? Because we have seen many filmmakers who have not been to a film school, and they are like, you don't need a film school to become a filmmaker. So what do you think about it?
That's a good question. I think it's changed a lot since I went to film school. I went in 2005, so that was more than 15 years ago. So it's a lot different today. I do agree today, I don't think it's as important to go to film school. I think today, like this Instagram Live and YouTube and just social media, I feel like you can learn. It's like film school. Right now, this is a film school that that people are getting for free, basically. Like if I was in film school and there was filmmakers that were giving free advice on the internet, I'd be listening to it. So I feel like it's changed a lot in the last 15 years since I went to film school, and I do think there's something important about it still, though, mainly because you meet a lot of people who are into the same stuff as you, so you can collaborate, make friends, become close, So there's definitely a lot of pluses to going to film school, even though you don't need it as much. You still need to go out there and network and meet people and make friends and kind of build that circle of other filmmakers that you're learning from and collaborating with.
Yeah, and I think you get an opportunity easily. Like you get cameras and you get a crew to work with an actor. So I think that's a plus point.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Inspiration, like which films did you watch which inspired you to become a filmmaker, and who were the filmmakers who inspired you?
It's not just one filmmaker, you know what I mean? Over the years, there's just been so many different films and filmmakers. I mean, everyone from, recent, like mostly in the last like 20 years, but like Chris Nolan is obviously, I love Chris Nolan. I love his films. A lot of like the older filmmakers like John Ford You know what I mean? Like, he
Yeah.
did a lot of, he made like 100 Westerns, you know what I mean? And it's just inspiring to see how many movies they made in the course of a year. Like, John Ford, 1 year, I think he made like he directed 7 movies. So you look at like some of these directors and you're like, wow, that's pretty incredible. I mean, today, you'll be lucky to make 7 features over 10 years, you know, and he directed 10, you know, it's inspiring sometimes to look back at older filmmakers, and they didn't have a lot of, they were building the language, you know what I mean? They were building out, like, how you can tell a story, like Kurosawa, you know, you watch his non-linear narratives like Rashomon, you can see how he took a story and told it in all these different ways, and you're like, oh wow, nobody ever did this before him. Yeah, that's cool. Maybe I could try something like that one day, tell a story completely differently. And you can tell, like, if it wasn't for, you know, Kurosawa, you'd never have Tarantino, you know what I mean? Because he's the first one that did things that, like, break the mold, and then another filmmaker comes along. So, you know, there's just, over the years, I mean, there's just so many different filmmakers, like David Lean, obviously Tarantino, you know, there's a lot of, I get, what you do as a filmmaker yourself is you watch other directors and you see, like, oh, I like the way he does those kind of things, or I like the way she shoots certain kinds of scenes, and it gives you inspiration, really. That's all it is. It's like looking at a painting and getting inspiration to do it yourself.
Yeah. And you were talking about John Ford, who made like 7 movies in a year. Even while I was researching about you, I saw that you made Trauma Center, which released in December, and in May you have movie again. So like nowadays directors take at least a year and a half to make movies. So you have like made 2 movies in a span of 6 months. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, it's been crazy. So, it's been a busy year, which is good.
Yeah. So talking about your college days, you have made award-winning short films like The Taking, and then you went to make your first feature, Victim. So what kind of challenges you faced while moving from the short film space to making like a feature film with The Victim?
It's a huge difference, you know what I mean? Like, when you make a short film, it's like you're trying to tell a story in 10 minutes, right? And you're trying to, now if you want to continue that into a feature, you have to now expand that narrative thread for 90 minutes, right? So it's a lot larger, it's a much more ambitious sort of task, and that's why a lot of filmmakers, they make that first short and they're like, oh, you know, this is easy, I can do this, you know what I mean? And then they make that first feature and it doesn't go well because they're not anticipating how much. It's basically like a 10-minute short is to a feature that's 90 minutes is now 10 times as hard because you're doing the same thing 10 times, you know what I mean? So it takes a lot more ambition and planning and preparation, and it takes like a really good script, you know what I mean? Because you want your first movie to be interesting or different. And a lot of times on the first movie, filmmakers get a little too ambitious, you know what I mean? They think that they can do something. They're not ready yet to kind of do something, and they kind of get a little too ambitious, or they realize how challenging it is. So it's a learning process. I think a lot of times making that leap from feature from short to feature is just, it's a learning lesson. And these days, though, the great thing is it's so much easier now for filmmakers. I mean, God, everything is just at your fingertips. You know what I mean? You have free editing software, free cameras. I mean, look at Steven Soderbergh. I mean, he shot an entire feature on an iPhone. I don't know if you've seen Unsane. Have you seen any of his movies? He did Unsane, and that looked incredible to me. I mean, it was like a well-done thriller. I mean, I've thought about it over the years. I'm like, why don't I just shoot a movie on an iPhone these days? I mean, like, fuck it, you know what I mean? It's like, why not, you know? Because the tools, it's funny, is over the years, I used to really obsess about, okay, what camera am I going to shoot this on, or what's it going to look like, what, you know, film versus digital, blah, blah, blah. Over the years, I really stopped caring. It doesn't matter. It's like all these cameras are exactly the same thing, 4K, they all look, it's all about the artistry and the way you light it and sculpt it and everything and color correct it. So as long as, this is like an area, this is a red, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I'm more interested in the script, like what's the story, who are the actors, who are the characters, how are we going to like tell this story visually? Like, that to me is, like, the camera itself, it's almost like an afterthought these days. I'm just like, oh, we're shooting on the ARRI, oh cool, all right, whatever. What are my lenses? Like, lenses, I'm interested in what lenses I'm using and
Yeah.
how the lenses. But like the camera is just a tool. People obsess about stuff, and it's like it's just a tool.
Yeah. So don't you think something like Christopher Nolan, he won't ever stop shooting on an IMAX format. So he is like super obsessed with that. So don't you think like there is a difference between like smartphone filmmaking and something like IMAX or like, I mean,
That, yeah, there's definitely a difference between those two. But even though, I mean, I honestly think if you shot Inception on an
Yeah.
iPhone, it'd still be a badass movie. You know what I mean? Like, it would still be an interesting story with great actors, cool, interesting visuals. Yeah, it wouldn't look as great as if it was shot on, 35, but it would still have like an impactful story. And
yeah. So
you
I
can't sit
think
around.
when you compare both, I think the quality of your frame and the lighting matters more than the camera.
Totally, yeah, exactly. That's the key. And the story you're telling.
The story.
You can have a pretty pictures if you want, but ultimately, if you're not pulling the audience into your story, then it doesn't matter. It's just they'll just shut off. They have a million other options. They'll just flip to another thing, So you have to really focus on telling interesting stories.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So in Games of Assassin, you were only involved in the direction part, but in 12 Feet Deep, you have co-written the film as well. So
Yeah.
what made you get involved in the writing of the film rather than just directing it? Also, can you tell us about your experiences in the writing process of 12 Feet Deep?
Yeah. Well, Game of Assassins, I wasn't happy with the script for that one. And it was one of those things where once we were shooting, I was like, yeah, I can't, I needed to get involved earlier in the process. Because as this film was coming together, I was like, man, this script has problems. You know what I mean? And it was like too late at that point. We were shooting the movie, and then you get into post, and you're like, ah, you know what I mean? So then that's why the next movie, 12 Feet Deep, I was like, I need.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, you're back. I lost you for a second there.
Yeah.
But basically, I want to control the story more, right? So I was like, okay, well, let me write a script where I learned the lesson from. Okay, if you just accept a script and you just shoot it, sometimes you're gonna be in trouble. You know what I mean? Because the story will have flaws or issues, and then you have to try to fix it. So it was a great process. I mean, I love the script. For 12 Feet Deep, I think was a great script, and it has a lot of symbolism in it and a lot of it was a great, well-told story. So I was able to really control that well with writing it with my co-writer.
So do you think that statement like every director should be a screenwriter is true? Like,
No, because a lot of the times, like Scorsese doesn't write any of his scripts. You know what I mean? Scorsese works with a writer, and they come up with an idea. And I think, but that's the thing is though, just because Scorsese doesn't write a script, it's like he'll spend like 10 years on a script because he's not happy with it, right? The writer will keep sending him the script, and he's like, no, I don't like this. Keep going back, work on this or this. And so I don't think, because the writing is such a different medium, that you have to be able to like write in that world. So as long as you understand story and you work with a writer, I think that's the important thing.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, do we expect in all your movies you'll be involved as a writer, or you just want to direct?
It'll depend. You know what I mean? It depends on the movie. Like the Survive the Night, I actually helped the writer a lot on that. Like, so I was working on the script. I don't have a writing credit on that one because of like the union kind of stuff, WGA. But that one I was really involved. The next one that I just did. Open source, I wasn't involved in the writing on that at all. So it always varies. Definitely, whenever I help write the script, I have a stronger connection to the material. I feel like it's a better story just because I know the story inside and out, and I can work with it to kind of really get it to where I want it to be.
Yeah. So, one major thing I like about your movies are the action sequences. I think action sequences in your movies are pretty solid. So, how important is the action choreography, blocking, and prepping? Do you have the same process for every movie, or it differs from movie to movie?
It differs on the movies. I mean, you got to remember, like the movies that, like the last couple movies I did, they're shot very quickly. Like we shot those movies in 12 days. Like Trauma Center was shot in 12 days. So that's not, you know what I mean. So like, Chris Hemsworth just did a movie on Netflix, Extraction. They spent like 6 weeks shooting that movie, so they have a lot more time to map it out. So when I have to do it, like if I don't have a lot of time, I have to think, okay, what can I achieve on the budget that I have and the amount of time that I have, and still make it look interesting, cool, and safe at the same time. You know what I mean? Because it's tricky with trying to tell a story or trying to choreograph an action sequence when you only have like 2 days to shoot it. You know what I mean? So a lot of times I'll look back at James Cameron. I still think is the best action director. I mean, you look at like Terminator 2 or Terminator 1 or True Lies. Oh my, like, so I'll study, like, before I do an action movie, I just watch a James Cameron. I'm like, he's done almost every kind of action sequence, like a chase in a car, running in an elevator, you know, an explosion, like every kind of action sequence. If you look at a lot of his movies, he's done a lot of them, and you see how he shoots a lot of those sequences. And a lot of it is you have to edit the sequence in your head. You have to be like, okay, I need to make sure to get this shot, this shot, this shot, and this shot, and just map it all out and shot list everything and just have in your head. And while you're shooting it, you got to be thinking like, okay, I'm going to edit it with this shot, go to this shot, go to that shot, and know that, you know, you only have so much time, so you have to be able to cover your ass that you got exactly what you needed to do that action sequence. And it's very much kind of like building tension, building suspense. And one thing I've learned is every action sequence always has to have something at the end, like a little button, a little moment, a little beat, so that the audience knows that, okay, it's over. You know what I mean? Otherwise, like, it feels unsatisfactory or unsatisfying. So that's one of the things that I realized just doing so much more action over the years.
Yeah, do you have this thing in mind, like sometimes when you're shooting this action scene, do you have this fear like you might be plagiarizing or like taking inspiration from somewhere? Do you want to keep it new, or do you want to like, do you take inspirations from other action movies like Terminator?
No, I feel like it doesn't matter because you're never going to get it exactly like Terminator. I mean, you know, and even like Tarantino, you look at any Tarantino movies, people always are like, dude, you ripped off like Sergio Leone or whatever. He's like, yeah, man, I did that on purpose because I think he's a badass. You know what I mean? So you look at like Tarantino and like The Hateful Eight or Kill Bill. I mean, like Kill Bill, there's action sequences in that are like straight ripped off of like Japanese cinema and Italian spaghetti westerns, but it's awesome. It's because it's not exactly that. It's not going to be exactly that, but you're gonna feel the influences, and then you're gonna add your own little element to it as well. So that's never a concern or something that's on my mind.
Yeah, sure. So actually, we have an audience question. Ritul Kumar is asking that if you want to cast some actor from India in a movie, who would it be and why? Do you know any Indian actors?
Dang, I don't know it off the top of my head. I know the guy that recently just passed away. There's like a really famous actor.
Yeah, Irfan Khan. He was one of the
greatest. He was incredible. Yeah, he's amazing. Or he was. But off the top of my head, I can't think of. I don't watch a lot of Indian cinema. I mean, it's been a while, but obviously, Dev Patel. I mean, he's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
he's Indian, right? Yeah, he's great.
Indian.
He's rich Indian. Yeah, I mean, I think he's like Indian American though, right? He's British.
Origin is
Indian.
Yeah. He's from India. Basically, his parents are from India.
Oh, okay.
So talking about your films again, like in Games of Assassin, the protagonist is trapped in a sunken castle, and in 12 Feet Deep, the protagonists are trapped in a pool. So all your movies like basically revolve around this particular location where people are trapped. So, how do you keep the audience hooked and the audience attention? Like, how do you keep the audience interested in your movie? Because it's just about one location, while other movies they show these amazing different locations. So, how do you do that?
Yeah, no, it's challenging. You know what I mean? It's a very challenging task, but one of the ways that you can do that is create a lot of variety in that single location. Like if you look back at 12 Feet Deep, it's the way that we shot that. The way like it starts off very wide, right, and kind of like slick and a lot of moving stuff, and then as the movie continues, the visual language changes, right, and then it gets a little bit more like medium close-ups, and then as the movie progresses, it gets more of the close-ups and it gets a little more handheld, and the water is touching the characters. So you create that visual variety, and then the color correction starts off very kind of warm, and then builds and builds and builds, and then so it's a lot of visual variety in what the audience is looking at. And then there's also the most important thing, which is you have to care about the characters. So if you can make an audience care about the people on screen, they'll watch them no matter what. You know, they could be sitting in a room talking to themselves, but if they're interesting, if they're fascinating, then the audience is like, oh, are they going to make it out? What's happening to them? Who are they? Why are they there? So you need the audience to be asking those questions, and they get bored when they don't care. You know what I mean? Once they're like, oh, I don't care what happens to these characters, then they shut it off.
Yeah.
So I feel like 12 Feet Deep, we did a great job with that, where you care about the two sisters. Like that was one of the flaws in Game of Assassins. I feel like you didn't care enough about who the characters were. So like you lost track of what was happening as the story went along, and that's why I was like, okay, next movie I need to take that lesson and make sure that whoever these characters are at the beginning, we really bond with them and we know who they are, why they're here, what kind of flaws they have, and what are they trying to overcome.
Yeah. When I came to know about 12 Feet Deep, I was like, this is just a swimming pool. How can you make it interesting? But like the way you have told the story, like by presenting challenges, like they talk about her engagement ring which she threw in the pool, and then the janitor enters and everything, and that really keeps us hooked in the film because it's transforming from one challenge to another challenge which the characters face. So I think that can also be one major thing.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I feel like that's a huge part of it. Is as the plot progresses, you just like raise the stakes a little bit more. So it's a little bit more, first they're like, okay, let's get out. And then there's this whole other thing that's revealed. And then the woman comes in. So you're building on those stakes so that the audience is like, just get them out of here. Come on. You know what I mean? So I think that's the key, is to keep building on those stakes.
Yeah, but one major thing is like when you keep building stakes, you have to give up a proper ending, because if the ending is bad, then the whole point of raising the stakes spoils. So I think the ending was pretty good as well. That's why I love the movie.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. I think that's huge.
Yeah. So all your films have this beautiful cinematography as well, where your frames are like not only beautiful in a sense, but also haunting, because it's meant to haunt the audience and create suspense. And my question is, what role does a director have in the cinematography of a film? Like the framing and lighting, how involved are you?
It depends on the director. You know what I mean? There are some directors that sort of just hand the keys over to the cinematographer and let him light it and let him kind of choose the lens and everything. But for me, I get very involved in that aspect of it because, like you said, it has a huge impact on the story that you're telling. So right from the beginning, and I've worked with different DPs, different cinematographers my whole career, so I learned something from every cinematographer I work with, and I really get involved with them from the beginning. So we'll work together. We'll come up with a visual palette for the entire film, and how are we visually telling the story? Like, what kind of camera movement are we going to have? Why are we going to have this kind of camera movement? What kind of visual location? How are we going to make this look? You know what I mean? Are we going to have a lot of shaky stuff, or are we going to keep it move stylistic, and should we have steady cam? So we talked about all this stuff, right? And then once we start shot listing, we literally sit down together. Every shot in the movie, I shot list every single shot, and we're on the same page, so that when we're on set, I know exactly. Okay, remember, this is the shot where we did this, and we come off of her back, and then we reveal and then so we know exactly what the shot is. But at the same time, I talk to my cinematographer and I try to create a vibe So I'll be like, I want to feel sort of like that, like that, like a haunting, like you said, like a haunting image, right? So give me that haunting, like, imagery of, the blah, 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 and I'll talk to him about it. But I'm not like, okay, put a 2K here, put an LED backlight here. I let them do that element of it because that's why I hired them, right? I mean, I'm not going to, like, I don't have time. There's so much other stuff to do on set. You don't want to spend time telling a DP where to put a light or how to light every little element. So you have to trust them a lot. And that's one of the things, that's why it's so important. And that's why a DP and a director, they work together a lot again and again and again, because you're trusting in the imagery of your story to this person. So it's definitely an important aspect.
Yeah, especially even in 12 Feet Deep, I remember there was this particular frame where there's this little hole in the cover of the swimming pool, and their hands are like showing. Like, that frame is very haunting. I was like, I feel the character in that frame when I see a frame like that. So that was
it was great. Haunting. I love the DP. The DP on that was great. He's amazing. Yeah. So I think it was the collaboration. You know what I mean? It was a great collaboration.
Yeah. Definitely. And even in like Survive the Night, it's basically you shoot at night, so the way he has lighted all the scenes are pitch perfect.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. Half the movie's at night and half, like, most of it's at night, but then there's some stuff at day too. So it should be interesting to see, how audiences react to that one. And that one, once again, it's single location. It's all on a farm. So it'll be interesting to see. And that one was challenging too. That one it was raining every day, so we had to stop shooting. We had to deal with rain, and it was a challenging film to make. It was one of my hardest, for sure.
Yeah, films like Survive the Night, I want to, really watch in a theater, because in a theater you get that audio experience and the visual experience. But sadly, because of the pandemic, I'll have to watch it on a streaming service. So, talking about that movie only, like, it has been delayed because of the pandemic. So how do you think this pandemic affects movie making, and what impact it will have on the theater versus the streaming services? How do you view this pandemic as an effect on cinema?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been very unprecedented. So it's been big. I mean, it's going to affect a lot of things. Just in terms of cinema, you know what I mean? People are going to be afraid to go to theaters for a while. Hopefully people will come back. I'm hoping that after, things start settling down more, people want to go back to the movies, see movies in theaters. It's definitely helped the streaming services a lot. And just shooting movies is going to be interesting. You know what I mean? A lot of people are afraid to go on set. So everybody has to wear masks. You have to wash your hands constantly, the gloves. You can't get too close to people. So it's definitely going to affect the way you make a movie. I'm hoping we'll, just for our sake as artists, we come out of this stronger, and we have an ability to keep telling our stories, because it's just, it's something that we can't control, and what are we going to do? You know what I mean? It's like, this is out of our hands, but we have to get back to work.
Do you think there will be a shift in the audience from theater to streaming services, like a huge major shift?
Well, it's already happening, you know what I mean? But the thing is, to me, at least, I feel like I love going to the cinema, because who wants to sit at home all day? You always are going to want to go outside and do something, right? So when you go out, you have a reason to, experience a story with an audience. When it's scary, everybody's scared. When it's a laugh, everybody laughs. When you're cheering, you go to like a Marvel movie, and Thor shows up on screen, everybody's cheering, you know what I mean? So I feel like once this pandemic ends, we need to have like a lot of Marvel movies come out, so people will just be like, just want to go see a lot of movies, big movies and event movies, and then slowly, other movies can start going out again, and hopefully, I don't know if I do feel like it's going to affect overall the theater experience. There's going to be less, but as long as it comes back, that's the key.
Yeah, so, and talking about streaming services, are you interested in the future to make like a web show or anything?
Not necessarily a web show, but I would love to do a streaming service show, like something for Netflix. Definitely that'd be fun, because they give you like 10 episodes to tell a story. So I'd love to be able to
Yeah.
like map out an entire story arc on a series for 10 episodes, like The Haunting of Hill House, or I love those shows where they can take a story and kind of map it out. So yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and most web shows revolve around a particular place, and your movies are also like revolving around a particular place. So I think you should make a Netflix show or anything in the future. We'll be very excited to see that.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So talking about you directing the actors, like how do you prep actors before filming a scene, and what kind of roles and suggestions do you give to a particular actor in any particular role in your film?
Yeah. Well, that's sort of a broad question because every movie is different and every actor is different. So you can't really go in there with like a very specific set of rules. Every film that you make, you cast a certain actor, and once you meet with that actor, you start talking about the character, who they are, what they do, their history, their backstory, how it's relevant to the script, and you kind of come up with a language together where you understand each other, and you're like, okay, this is who this character is, this is what's happening, and every actor is different. Some actors, they really want to rehearse, right? They want to do the scene again and again and again until they get it. Some actors are like, no, man, just let's save it for when we get on set, and let me just turn it on then. And some actors, they're very like insecure. They want you to every take, like go up to them and tell them like, that was great, man. Well, what about this? Or try this time, or give them a little adjustment. And some actors, they're just like, they just do their thing, and they're like, that's it. You know what I mean? So that's the one. Working with actors is not something you can learn from a book, or it's not something you can learn from somebody. It's something that you learned by doing it. It's just one of those things that once you've worked with actors enough times, different kinds of actors, different levels of experienced actors, you start like, oh, okay, interesting. You start realizing like when you do a take, sometimes you'll do a take and you're like, oh, that's not exactly what I want. And then you'll give an adjustment to an actor and you're like, fuck, that's still not working. And then you realize sometimes you need them to do something completely wrong or something completely different just to get it out of their system. Or like, let's say you need them to be like really angry in a scene, right? And then they come in there and it's like the energy's off, right? So then you say, okay, and then they're afraid to go over the top, right? You give them that safety net. You're like, you know what? This take, we're not going to use it. You just go over the top, go crazy, mad, angry, all over the place. And you give them that safety net of do whatever they want. So then they get it out and then they feel free. They're like, oh, this is not, okay, all right, I did it. And then the next take, now they're kind of at the place now where it feels more natural because they got it out of their system. So a lot of times with like more inexperienced actors, sometimes they do stuff like that. Or sometimes if the intensity isn't there, maybe you could tell them to do some push-ups or jump around, run around a little bit to get them like physically, just like their heart racing and them sweating and everything. And then they feel like they're in the scene, you know what I mean? Suddenly they're like, oh, well, I feel like I'm in the scene now. So a lot of times it comes down to that. And then it just depends on the actors. Like Bruce, he's done 100 movies, you know what I mean? Like the kind of direction I would give Bruce is not going to be the same that I would give to even like an actor who's done 20 movies. Right? Like Bruce has done it so much. He shows up on set, he just turns it on. You know what I mean? He just like shows up. He looks like he's like sleepy 1 second, then he turns it on. You're like, whoa! And once you've worked with like these really A-list actors, you realize like why they're so good is because part of it is they're just unpredictable. Because you read a scene, right? And sometimes you look at a scene and you're like, oh, I've seen this scene a million times before. This is sort of cliche, right? So then the actor a good actor, like a really good actor, like a Bruce Willis or whoever, right? They'll look at the scene and be like, hey, Matt, well, what if I try this instead? Can I try this instead? They come up with their own thing, right? And then you're like, oh, shit, that's interesting. Like, try that, you know what I mean? So they'll take a scene and they'll take it up another notch, you know what I mean? That's why you realize these Brad Pitts, Leonardo DiCaprio's, Bruce Willis's, they're not just going to read the line. They're going to try to take it up a notch or do some crazy or kind of play with it. So that's the fun thing about working with like really experienced actors.
Yeah, and I think you're okay with them improvising Like,
for to an extent, you know what I mean. As long as they're not changing the story, it doesn't really matter. And then sometimes improvising can kind of give you some ideas that you never would have thought of. So it just depends on what the scene is, you know. It depends on how far they're going with it, and sometimes it's just fun to do it just to see where it goes, right? So.
yeah. So, like, are you involved in the editing part of your films as well? Because in an action movie or in a suspense movie, editing is also like it's a very important thing to like give attention to. So, are you involved in that?
I'm definitely involved. Like for me, I've had the same editor since film school. So for 15 years, he's edited every short film, every feature, every movie. You can look at his name's Ryan. He's done every movie that I've done. So yeah, I mean, I've built that relationship where he knows the kind of shots and stuff that I get. So it's so easy for me to work with him because before we even show up to look at the cut, I already know what he's doing. Like we're already talking on the phone. I'm like, okay, we shot this. Or I'm already talking to him while I'm shooting. Even I'm like calling him. I'm like, oh man, we shot this shot, and this shot. What do you think? And he'll tell me what he thinks, and he's thinking about editing, and we have this like back and forth conversation. So by the time we have our first cut together, it's a pretty strong first cut just because of that shorthand that we have and that relationship that we have.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you is like, what do you think about VFX and like the green screen cinema? Like, how okay are with you? Like, do you want to shoot a scene in a real location, or are you okay with green screens and stuff?
I mean, obviously, for the actors, it's always more interesting when you're in the actual location because then they feel like they're in a real place and it's a lot easier to step into the world. But ultimately, I mean, it's like the theater. You know what I mean? When you're in theater, you walk on a stage and it's just the stage and there's some curtains and there's a few things laying around, you know, and you're supposed to imagine you're in a castle and you're like Hamlet standing in the middle of a castle. So it's like a really good actor and a really good filmmaker, you should be able to see beyond the edges of the frame and kind of put it together. I mean, or there's times where it can be like confusing, but I feel like green screen is it's another tool, you know, it's another tool, another way to tell a story. I mean, if you're shooting a movie and it's supposed to be Asgard, I mean, how are you going to shoot a movie in Asgard? You know what I mean? You gotta put it together in VFX. So, like, that's how you do it. I mean, and it's just part of the process.
Great. So, like, we are done with the basic questions related to filmmaking. And before ending the session, I want to ask you, like, how's life going in quarantine for a filmmaker like you? Like, are you working currently on something, or are you writing something?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been tougher because you can't meet with people. But thankfully, I'm doing post-production on the last movie. So I'm finishing up post on the last movie, which will probably be done in a month. And then just doing a lot of writing, you know what I mean? I'm writing, doing a lot of reading scripts. And hopefully within the next kind of couple months or a month and a half, we'll know more about where this is going. And maybe we can shoot another movie in the fall. I mean, that's ideal, is to shoot at least one more movie this year. So I'm hoping that we can get a script going, and we'll see, you know what I mean? We'll see what happens. I mean, everyone's trying to be optimistic and hopeful, and we'll see where it goes.
Wow. So, like, you will be shooting one more movie this year. So, like, I don't expect you taking any break or anything.
Yeah, exactly. I hope not. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's hard to say. You know, we don't know. It's everything's so up in the air right now with this quarantine and everything. But you know, we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm in California, so I think California has been doing okay. You know, New York has been hit a little harder, but California has been okay. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's up in the air.
Okay. So, like, before ending the session, can you recommend us some movies or shows that you like for the people to watch?
Yeah, right now I'm trying to think what I've been watching. I've been watching Westworld. I think that's a great show. Wow. You guys have check something out. I think Westworld's a great show. It's really well shot, interesting plot twists and turns, great acting. That was great. And then the action movie that I just saw with Chris Hemsworth. That was a great action movie. The director Sam Hargrave. Awesome. I think that was a great action movie. Really well done. And then what else?
That one scene in that 10-minute one take scene that was really
beautiful. Yeah. That was really well done. Yeah, that was awesome. So something like that, it's not easy to do. So you got to respect that.
Exactly. So it was really fun having you with us, and I learned a lot, and hopefully the people who were a part of this also learned a lot. It was a really privilege to interview you and have this session with you. So we just have high hopes for Survive the Night, and we wish you all the best and happy quarantine.
Thanks, so, you too, man. Thank you so much. It was great to chat, and best of luck with everything. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.